Part 1 sets the stage for the story by immersing the reader into the enigmatic world of the Rothschilds of the East, a family whose wealth and influence rival any in modern history. The story begins with the protagonist, a young, ambitious investigative journalist, arriving in a sprawling Asian metropolis known for its rapid development, stark wealth disparities, and tightly controlled political environment. This city, with its gleaming skyscrapers juxtaposed against crowded neighborhoods and hidden alleys, immediately conveys a sense of both opportunity and danger. The journalist has been drawn to the city by rumors of an immensely powerful family that operates largely out of public view yet influences almost every facet of the region as economy and governance. These rumors paint the family as brilliant, ruthless, and virtually untouchable, earning them the nickname the Rothschilds of the East. The first part's main purpose is to establish the protagonist's goals, the stakes, and the initial conflict. The journalist is motivated by a desire to uncover the truth, expose corruption, and perhaps claim recognition for a daring story. Yet, as soon as they begin navigating the city, it becomes clear that the family's power is pervasive. Subtle signs of influence appear everywhere. The same faces at multiple corporate events, politicians who seem unusually cooperative with certain business interests, and law enforcement officials who tread lightly around certain neighborhoods or individuals. Even casual conversations in cafes or taxis hint at an omnipresent authority. This omnipresence creates an almost oppressive atmosphere, establishing that the family's reach extends far beyond the surface glitter of wealth into the very mechanisms of control that shape society. The narrative also introduces a sense of mystery and tension. The family's public presence is minimal. Most people have never seen them personally, yet their decisions reverberate throughout the city. This duality, the combination of invisibility and omnipotence, makes them both fascinating and frightening. For the journalist, this tension fuels a mix of excitement and fear. Every meeting or encounter could bring a breakthrough or a threat, emphasizing the high stakes of their investigation. The part also foreshadows potential dangers, anonymous warnings, shadowy figures observing the journalist, and subtle hints that prying too deeply could provoke retaliation. These early signs set up a suspenseful tone that carries through the story. Additionally, Part 1 lays the groundwork for the family's characterization without direct interaction. Through observation, rumors, and the reactions of others, readers begin to understand that this is a family whose wealth is matched by strategic cunning. They control not only businesses and investments, but also information, loyalty, and perception. This opening section immerses the audience in a world where power is absolute, and it creates a clear motivation for the protagonist, uncovering the truth behind a seemingly untouchable empire. In essence, Part 1 establishes the foundation for the story's intrigue, introducing the setting, central characters, and the ominous aura of power. It combines suspense, mystery, and social commentary, preparing the reader for a deeper exploration of the family's inner workings and the ethical dilemmas that will arise in subsequent parts. Part 2, titled Behind the Curtain, shifts the narrative from surface-level observation to an exploration of the inner workings of the mysterious family, providing the reader with a deeper understanding of their power and methods. Having arrived in the city and sensed the pervasive influence of the family in Part 1, the journalist now seeks to penetrate the veil of secrecy that surrounds them. This section emphasizes investigation, discovery, and mounting tension as the protagonist begins to access information that is not meant for the public eye. The turning point in this part comes when the journalist gains the trust of an insider, a former employee or associate of the family who has grown disillusioned with their operations. This source becomes the gateway into the hidden world of influence and control. Through the insider, the protagonist learns that the family's power is not just a result of wealth, but also of meticulous planning, strategic manipulation, and psychological control. They are experts at creating illusions, shaping public perception, and neutralizing opposition before it can challenge them. Every deal, alliance, and acquisition is carefully orchestrated, leaving no room for error or rebellion. The insider explains that the family maintains a network of loyalty, intimidation, and subtle coercion that extends into politics, finance, media, and even law enforcement, allowing them to operate with near impunity. As the journalist delves deeper, the narrative exposes the complexity and ruthlessness of the family's strategies. They are shown to be masterful manipulators who use both charm and fear to achieve their goals. While their public image might suggest philanthropy, sophistication, or success earned through legitimate means, the reality is far darker. Deals are engineered to suppress competition, rumors are weaponized to ruin opponents, and alliances are exploited for maximum benefit. The journalist begins to recognize patterns of influence that operate like a tightly wound machine, with each family member playing a calculated role in maintaining control. The story emphasizes that the family's wealth is only part of their power. Their true strength lies in the web of dependency, loyalty, and fear they weave around the city. Tension escalates as the protagonist starts to experience the consequences of pursuing forbidden knowledge. Subtle threats appear. Unfamiliar cars tail them, shadowy figures appear outside their apartment, and anonymous messages warn them to stop digging. This creates a growing sense of danger that is psychological as much as physical, reflecting the family's ability to manipulate and intimidate from the shadows. These moments also serve to humanize the journalist, showing their mixture of fear, determination, and ethical struggle. The audience feels the stakes rising. Uncovering the truth could yield a groundbreaking story but also place the journalist in serious jeopardy. The tone of Part 2 is suspenseful, methodical, and revealing. It transforms the story from mere observation into active investigation, giving readers insight into the mechanisms of power and corruption. By the end of this section, the journalist has gained knowledge but also understands the high cost of pursuing the story. They now have a clearer picture of the family's ruthless efficiency and omnipresence, setting up both the moral and personal conflicts that will drive the narrative forward in subsequent parts. In essence, Part 2 exposes the machinery behind the family's public facade, blending intrigue, danger, and ethical complexity. It solidifies the journalist as motivation and establishes the growing tension that will carry through the rest of the story. Part 3, titled The Faces of Wealth, marks a turning point in the story, moving from investigation and discovery to direct exposure of the family's public persona and the personalities that define their empire. By this stage, the journalist has already understood the family's immense influence and clandestine operations. Now they are granted or manage to secure access to one of the family's most private and ostentatious gatherings, a high-profile gala that serves as both a social spectacle and a display of power. This part aims to reveal the human dimensions behind the family's wealth, their charisma, cruelty, strategic brilliance, and the moral ambiguities that define them. The opening of Part 3 is immersive. The journalist enters a world of opulence that borders on the surreal. The gala takes place in a grandiose mansion or luxury hotel ballroom, adorned with priceless art, rare artifacts, and furnishings that speak of centuries of accumulated wealth. Guests include influential politicians, corporate magnates, and celebrities, all subtly demonstrating their allegiance or indebtedness to the family. The sheer scale and extravagance of the event immediately impressed the journalist and the audience, reinforcing the idea that the family's wealth is not only financial but symbolic, a tool for asserting dominance and shaping social hierarchies. Every element of the gala is carefully curated to project a certain image: control, sophistication, and unchallengeable authority. Within this environment, Part 3 introduces key family members, each with a distinct personality and method of influence. Some are charming and charismatic, capable of winning allies through sheer magnetism and intellect. Others are cold, calculating, and intimidating, using fear and manipulation to enforce loyalty. By observing their interactions with guests and staff, the journalist begins to map the family's internal hierarchy and understand their roles in maintaining the empire. This section emphasizes contrasts between appearances and reality. A family member who smiles graciously at a politician may be orchestrating that same politician's ruin in another sphere. These revelations highlight the duality of power and the careful performance required to sustain it. Part 3 also explores the ethical tension of wealth and power. The journalist witnesses firsthand the consequences of the family's influence on others, whispered threats to competitors, coerced business deals, and subtle social pressures that leave individuals trapped in compromising positions. At the same time, they observe the allure of the family's charm and generosity, making it difficult to categorize them as purely villainous or benevolent. This moral complexity adds depth to the narrative, forcing both the protagonist and readers to confront the gray areas of power, influence, and ambition. The tension escalates as the journalist realizes that simply observing is not enough. They are now part of a dangerous game. The family scrutiny is subtle but constant. A fleeting glance, a pointed comment, or a quiet assessment of their reaction signals that the journalist's presence is noted and that further curiosity could have consequences. By the end of Part 3, the journalist has gained critical insight into the human faces behind the empire, as well as the personal risks of continuing their investigation. In essence, Part 3 blends spectacle, characterization, and moral ambiguity. It transforms abstract notions of wealth and power into tangible, humanized forms while reinforcing the story's tension and suspense. The audience is now intimately acquainted with the family's public personas and the ethical complexity of their empire, setting the stage for the exploration of human cost and personal stakes in the following parts. Part 4, titled The Human Cost, shifts the narrative from the glamorous and strategic world of the family to the consequences of their actions on ordinary people. Up to this point, the journalist has observed the family's immense influence, wealth, and carefully orchestrated public image. But Part 4 emphasizes the darker repercussions of that power. It is here that the story gains emotional depth, highlighting the human suffering, ethical dilemmas, and societal distortions caused by the family's ruthless pursuit of control. The part begins with the journalist encountering individuals whose lives have been directly or indirectly affected by the family. These might include former employees, small business owners ruined by predatory practices, or political figures forced to comply with the family's agenda. Through their stories, the journalist uncovers patterns of coercion, manipulation, and exploitation. These people represent the hidden victims of a system engineered to protect the family's dominance at all costs. The narrative contrasts their struggles with the family's opulence, creating a stark visual and emotional dichotomy that underscores the disparity between wealth and human suffering. Through interviews and clandestine meetings, the journalist learns how the family's power manifests in subtle but devastating ways. For example, competitors might face sudden regulatory scrutiny, media smears, or social isolation orchestrated by the family's network. Employees may be coerced into unethical practices under threat of termination or public disgrace. Ordinary citizens may experience the ripple effects of monopolized markets, inflated costs, or manipulated policies that favor the family's enterprises. This part makes it clear that the family's influence is not abstract. It is tangible, far-reaching, and morally corrosive, affecting people who have no means of resisting it. The journalist also confronts the psychological dimension of this power. Victims often internalize a sense of helplessness, as if their fates are predetermined by forces beyond their control. This emotional weight adds layers of tension to the story, emphasizing the stakes not just for the journalist, but for everyone caught in the family's orbit. The audience begins to understand that the family's empire is sustained not merely through financial acumen, but through fear, dependency, and the suppression of dissent. Here, the narrative explores the ethical and emotional cost of extreme wealth, making the story resonate on a personal level for readers. The tension escalates as the family becomes aware that the journalist is probing these sensitive areas. Subtle threats intensify, surveillance becomes more noticeable, anonymous warnings grow explicit, and previously minor incidents now feel menacing. Part 4 establishes that uncovering the human cost of power is dangerous and that those who try to expose it may face retaliation. The journalist's moral resolve is tested. How far can they go without endangering themselves or the people they are trying to protect? Finally, Part 4 deepens the story's thematic complexity. It challenges readers to reflect on the broader implications of wealth, control, and inequality. The narrative demonstrates that power is not just about money. It is about shaping society, bending individuals to one's will, and dictating outcomes that affect countless lives. By the end of this section, the journalist is no longer just an observer, they are emotionally invested, morally compelled, and acutely aware of the personal risks involved in continuing their investigation. Part 5, titled The Confrontation, represents the story's most intense and suspenseful section, where the journalist moves from observer and investigator to an active participant in the dangerous dynamics of the family as empire. By this stage, the journalist has collected detailed information about the family's inner workings, witnessed their lavish public displays, and uncovered the human cost of their power. Part 5 is where all the previous discoveries collide, forcing a direct encounter with the family and escalating the stakes dramatically. The part opens with the journalist deciding that an expose or direct engagement is necessary. This could take the form of arranging a face-to-face meeting with a key family member, attempting to publish a damning article, or confronting them at another high-profile event. The tension is immediate. The family is known for anticipating threats, manipulating narratives, and neutralizing challenges long before they become public. As the journalist prepares, the story emphasizes meticulous planning, nervous anticipation, and the heavy weight of potential consequences. Every detail, from who to speak to, what evidence to reveal, and how to phrase questions is critical, because missteps could jeopardize both the journalist's life and the lives of the whistleblowers or victims they've interviewed. During the confrontation itself, the family's personalities and strategic brilliance are fully revealed. Some members display charm, grace, and persuasive eloquence, making it difficult for the journalist to assert themselves. Others adopt a more intimidating posture, employing subtle threats or veiled warnings to remind a journalist of the power imbalance. This combination of charisma and menace demonstrates why the family has remained untouchable despite their controversial practices. It also highlights the duality of their influence. They can be affable and engaging in public while simultaneously orchestrating complex manipulations behind the scenes. Conflict is central in this section. The journalist faces moral, intellectual, and physical challenges. How to reveal truths without endangering sources, how to push back against psychological intimidation, and how to maintain ethical integrity under pressure. The family, in turn, uses every tool at their disposal to control the narrative, manipulate perceptions, and protect their empire. This tense back and forth emphasizes the high stakes involved and underscores the story's themes of power, corruption, and human resilience. The confrontation also forces the journalist to confront the limits of individual action. Even with compelling evidence, can they truly challenge an empire built on wealth, influence, and fear? The tone of Part 5 is intense, suspenseful, and often nerve-wracking. Scenes are charged with the potential for sudden danger, unexpected revelations, and psychological maneuvering. Dialogue and internal monologue are used to heighten tension, showing the journalist's thought process and the family's calculated responses. By the end of this section, readers experience the emotional and moral weight of confronting such concentrated power. Ultimately, Part 5. The confrontation is the climax of the journalist's investigation. It is a collision of information, ambition, and human willpower. While it may not completely dismantle the family's empire, it exposes critical truths, heightens personal stakes, and forces both protagonist and audience to grapple with the reality of power's reach. It sets the stage for the resolution and reflection that will follow in the final part of the story. Part 6, titled The Aftermath, serves as the resolution of the story, providing both narrative closure and thematic reflection. By this stage, the journalist has confronted the family, uncovered layers of their operations, and witnessed the human consequences of their power. Part 6 explores the repercussions of these actions, not just for the journalist, but for the victims, the public, and the family itself, while emphasizing the story's moral and philosophical questions about wealth, influence, and accountability. The part begins with the journalist taking steps to expose the family, whether through publication, broadcast, or another means of disseminating their findings. However, the narrative makes it clear that the family's reach is vast and resilient. While some truths may emerge publicly, much of the empire remains intact. This conveys the sobering reality that entrenched power is difficult to dismantle, and that even the most determined efforts can only partially illuminate the shadows in which such families operate. The journalist's struggle is emblematic of the broader tension between individual agency and systemic control, a recurring theme throughout the story. Simultaneously, Part 6 focuses on the personal consequences for the protagonist. Throughout their investigation, they have taken significant risks, exposing themselves to surveillance, threats, and potential harm. They must now confront the emotional toll of the pursuit stress, fear, and moral conflict while grappling with the knowledge that some victims' suffering may continue despite their efforts. These internal struggles deepen the reader's connection to the journalist, highlighting the human cost of confronting vast and ruthless power. The narrative emphasizes that heroism in such situations is often quiet, partial, and fraught with compromise. The part also revisits the victims and secondary characters introduced in earlier sections. Some experience relief or validation as parts of the family's practices are revealed, while others remain trapped or marginalized, reminding readers that justice is rarely absolute in the face of extreme wealth and influence. These interactions reinforce the story's critique of systemic inequality and the moral ambiguities inherent in human power structures. The journalist's role as both observer and participant underscores the complex dynamics between truth, influence, and societal impact. Part 6 additionally reflects on the family itself. While some members may face scrutiny or minor setbacks, the narrative emphasizes their resilience, strategic foresight, and ability to adapt to challenges. They retain significant influence, ensuring that their empire continues largely unscathed. This conclusion is intentionally bittersweet. The audience recognizes the partial victories achieved, but also the enduring dominance of the family. By doing so, the story avoids simplistic resolutions, instead encouraging readers to consider the enduring implications of concentrated power in society. The tone of this section is reflective, contemplative, and nuanced. It balances the suspense and intensity of earlier sections with a measured consideration of consequences, ethics, and human resilience. Through the journalist's experiences and observations, the story invites readers to engage with larger questions, How much can one individual achieve against entrenched systems? What is the cost of truth? And how do wealth and influence shape morality and society? In essence, Part 6. The aftermath ties together the story's investigative arc, emotional stakes, and thematic resonance. It leaves readers with a sense of closure while acknowledging ambiguity and complexity, emphasizing that the real power of the family and the moral challenges of confronting it extends far beyond any single expose or confrontation.